It's another amazing day. I didn't realize how warm it is out here, and I procrastinated watching YouTube videos. But now I'm going to go ahead and get this last stuff here, which is some willow trees and a tank, and then I'm going to empty out the rental property over there now that it's sold. And I lost a bunch of money on that, so if you're a bill collector, don't expect a bunch of cash. But here we go. So I brought the truck all the way up here. Isn't that awesome? But this is not what I want to show you. Not how convenient it is to be able to bring a truck up here. But I want to show you something about these detention basins. Everybody's bitching about the detention basins. And again, I'm going to walk 45-degree angles down this slope, which is a very steep slope. And I'm going to show you something about this basin. Let me switch back here. Look at this basin. So it is November. And we're going through all this dead grass. See how the grass dies? And we're now on the shelf of the detention basin. This detention basin has the potential to fill up with 2 feet of water, maybe 3 feet of water. And look at what we've got here. Completely dry. Now it is habitat for birds, as you can hear. And you can see I have a bird in the frame there. But worst case scenario, this shelf that I'm standing on would cover with water. It typically does not. But if we have a big storm surge, this will fill up. And then it'll hold water off of the houses up here, right there, and then this house as well. And now cattail grew in here. I did not plant cattail in here. It grew up here by itself. And if we're careful, I'll spook up the crane that's down at the bottom, or the herring. But here's what I want to show you. This grass, all this seed, all this grass going to seed, and you can see that seed right there, will fall into the cracks, and eventually this whole area will grass over. Now these drains here are not connected to anything with incoming water. Let's walk all the way up over on this edge. By the way, there's a shelf all the way around the detention basin, and all of this area will fill with water in a major storm surge. And that's why we've gotten the environment for cattail, which I will definitely dig up some and take with me. And there's some pipes up here somewhere that don't fill up with water, that don't bring any water in here. So this is all groundwater, surface water runoff. And you notice I'm walking right through it. And then you can see over here how it comes down this channel. Now, if we had a better opportunity to clean this up, I would have had pipe underground here, because running over the surface, you can see the channel, which almost fell in. Okay, that channel is not best practice. That would not be there if we were able to put a pipe underneath or properly manage the top. But let's keep going up top here, because this is a bit of debate, and I want to get this pipe out of here, because this pipe is just laying on the ground. It's not doing anything. It needs to go over to storage. But this basin here, which I'm in Chuck Taylor's, by the way, I'm going to walk around in. This is actually not on my property. This is another basin that fills up to stage the water as it comes down the hill. Now you can see there is some water coming through there. It's because we get, there's a spring in front of this house next door, and we get the running water from that. Now all these pipes and tubes that are running all over the place down here don't do anything. So we'll go up one more, and you'll see that water's channeling because these pipes were not properly sealed and implemented. So now I'm going to walk down here. You will notice there's water right here, but I've got water draining here, and I'm going to be in here to get this. All right, I'll throw it all the way over there so I can clean it up. This area right here holds a bit of water, but you can see the depth and the creatures in it, and there are no mosquito larvae. Now, there shouldn't be any mosquito larvae in November, but I'm just showing you that I'm walking on this, and that even though everything is dry, we still have flowing water. Now, why would we have flowing water? Well, because there's a spring up here. And this one, I don't want to walk in because there is a spring. And where does the spring come from? But somewhere under that house. And so the reason why there's a little bit of water still here in this whole area is because it seeps up from the ground. And sometimes there's sewage from their overflow. But this one up here is dry. And I'll walk in it to show you that it's dry. So in fact, that is a spring. And it's actually not on my property. So the thing that we have to understand here with earthworks, because we've done the full circle, is that we're going to have different types of hydrology. And instead of being worried about how it runs or what it does, by the way, that little hole over there is wet too. We ought to make the very best of it. And the very best of it is to have marshland plants that absorb the water up, and then over the course of the year, we'll hold that water with the maximum amount of surface area so that the water evaporates. So these particular impounding of water are actually natural phenomena tied to groundwater seepage that comes from this watershed. And I'm just going to go ahead and I'll walk through here. You see me walking through. I'm not getting wet. By the way, see, just a little moist. And then over here, this is not wet at all either. So there's no water flowing down from above other than rain events off of that yard there, that drainage pipe right there, and then what might seep in the ground over here and across this space. But the majority of the water that's in these two basins comes from groundwater under this property. Now I also know that in front of the property, they had to install drainages to send water to a detention basin on the other side of the property. So all this drama and frustration is actually self-induced, but it's also part of the land design, because if we were to walk all the way to the top of that hill and look up the hill, you'd see that there's probably another 20 or 30 feet elevation that basically impounds water, soaks and spreads the water, and then it comes out down here in a spring. And if it was properly managed, which it has not been properly managed because there were city complaints, if it was properly managed, there would be a giant pipe down here. There'd actually be a spring header and then a piping system to move this water out to wider basins. Initial design was that basin was supposed to go all the way across and then all the way behind this other property. But due to it being steep and they didn't want to take down the fence, it needed to be here. And so these catches are catching groundwater and surface water runoff, detaining it, and then moving it down another step where you can see it's supposedly a drought. This is November the 4th. And supposedly there's a drought, but there's running water right here from groundwater from a spring. Some of it accumulates right here, which includes surface runoff from over there, but the majority of it is coming from underground. Now this whole side was supposed to be elevated to about where their ground is right now. And then we could have put in a barrel like that. See that over there? Could have put a barrel like that in the ground with seepage in it, and then a drain so that seepage would overflow. That water runs year round. And during a drought, that's how much water is running right now. But there would have been seepage that would have allowed the slowing, spreading, and draining of all this water. And that one could come out too. That one's been eroded over. And you can see there's a watershed down here. And I'll walk one more down so that you can see that the bottom basin, being that far below grade, has also a spring in it. And look at this. Look at this slope. All right, bear with me, folks. And you can see all the way down at the bottom how the plants are growing around it. There's also a spring down there. And so these basins, catch basins, are doing they're serving a useful purpose. They're slowing spreading water. They're accumulating water. So instead of a big wet spot down here, we've got the surface water erosion being accumulated, and we have large drainage areas that in the future, probably in 2 or 3 more years, could be filled with rock and then covered with grass. And then there'd be a giant access to the back of the house. There'd be a lot of space back here for recreation. If this grade was cleaned up and there was a sump for the spring, then you could just ride a lawnmower down here, mow all this up, and then mow up the bottom. And so the bottom is likely not to dry out for 10, 15 years because that originally was 15 feet deep. And then, of course, we stopped the work when the city was complaining in late 2020, I think it was, after we replaced the sewer lines. And I'm going to actually walk down here because it looks like there's another pipe down there, which is probably not very bright to be doing with my soft shoes on. But you can see, oh, wow, this is an interesting point here. So this is from the neighbor's watershed right here. Comes across their property line, and then it runs down this slope. And you can see the trenching. That's why there's no grass growing here. And then while we're here, walk all the way down. You can see it come across this bump here. There we go. You can see the grass. See, if anybody complains about my grass being too tall, the neighbor's grass is too tall as well. Beautiful animal trail right here to this basin. And now that I'm all the way down here, we'll be able to see the deer tracks. All right, now this is all sediment, so I'm not going to walk out there. And you can see how the plants are coming in. And this is probably not, because I'm already about 3 feet down, this is probably not as deep as it originally was. But this basin, of course, is rather large. There might be mosquito fish still in it, but it is now 3 feet below the drain. And willows are starting to grow up around it. Again, this would not exist if the watershed from the house far over there that comes down and across the bottom, if the watershed from these 2 homes, and then of course this home, were not in place. So I'm going to walk across the back here real quick to show you the protected area is back here where there's a creek. I just heard a frog. So there's a giant brush dam back here. There's the property line over there. And let's follow through over here where there's a deer trail. Now again, maintenance-wise, this would have been grassed out. You can see how the deer have come through here, and it would be cleaned up. But here's the last, see the bird? Here's the last catch before it goes to the creek. Now there's no water running here. I can hear stuff running around and splashing down there in the creek. And so we're back on this side. The inflow for those drains are actually right here, but they might be covered. Oh, no, there it is. Right there. All right, so they're almost covered in silt. And so where I'm standing, I've had water levels this high before. And you can see in a drought, it's much lower. It's providing water to local habitat and wildlife, as you can see from the footprints. But you can also see all the seeds from the overgrown grass. So everybody's been giving me a hard time about this. Pay close attention to the video because this is actually how it's done. And then you'll notice that on my side, there's very, very little, if no erosion. Yet on the other side, there's all kinds of erosion. So if we had ownership on this water, where did this water come from? It actually didn't come from my property. And if it wasn't here, it would be in a creek. So this is an example of a proper design in action. You'll notice the trees that are growing around here are willows and the type of trees that would eventually enclose this whole space. And there would be no water here. It would be silt that's coming down from the neighbor's yard. And ultimately, if this basin was the whole length of the back of the property, so basically we wanted to go all the way back on the other side and use that soil to build a terrace, kind of like the one up here, we would have been able to drive a vehicle behind both of those homes. And this soil would have given us a detention basin that was about 2 feet deep. And I think it's 200 and some feet long. And so it would be more like this, in which I can walk through because there's no moisture in here. Nothing in here except grass and birds. So the reason this got cut out the way it is because there was supposed to be another basin here, and this was going to get all tracked in. And this basin would have gone all the way across to that white tree over there. And then there would have been a very long area, so it gives us maximum surface area. And that ultimately minimizes the amount of water that can pool up. So folks, listen carefully. There are right ways of doing these things, and this is the right way. This has caused 4 years of misunderstanding. Okay, so you can do the project right. Look at all that seed. You can do all the project right and still have people bitch and moan. The underlying factor here is that when someone actually looks at the evidence, they realize this is functioning exactly the way it's supposed to. There were 6 basins on the property. This on the bottom, on the other side of that house, on the other side of the uphill here, down here, upslope from here, and then there's a couple up in the front. Everything is functioning as it should. Now in rainy season, when it's pouring down rain, yes, these basins will have water in them. They're called detention basins for a reason, because they catch all that water before it goes to the creek. Now I'm going to walk through here following the animal trails. I'll walk over the edge, and I can't get back. I'm not going to try to get back there to where the creek is. But again, this mound of soil is followed by a mound of brush, which is followed by undisturbed area around the creek. At this point where I'm standing, I am standing on a property line, and these basins cross 3 properties. Anybody who pulls up a GIS map can tell that. Anybody that comes out and does a simple survey. And then when you look at the watershed management for the amount of surface area that runs off here, you'll see that there's water coming from that property there, that property there, that property there, and that property there. But it was unfortunate that folks didn't let us finish. And so only the 2 properties in the middle, which I own, have 0 erosion, have 0 runoff. Now they do contribute to this because the rainwater off the roofs and the rainwater off the front yard come down to this basin. So maybe you can understand why I get so upset that people don't take the time to investigate. People don't take the time to look into it. But if you do an earthworks the right way, now in this case, we could have got a soil disturbance permit, even though it wasn't required. We could have got it on the entire square footage of the property rather than the individual properties that were necessary. But we did not have, we didn't sit down and write up a large earth disturbance plan because it had taken several other months, and we had trees falling down and we had a very tight window to do the work. So we relied on the fact that in the state of Virginia, that permits are not required for logging activities, and that post-logging activities, the inspector is going to tell you to do some things. There's both these sewer lines were leaking, and since there are springs back here, and we needed to have the earthworks in place to address that. But bottom line, anybody with a little bit of a review of the Virginia guidelines for rainwater management, soil erosion, and such would see the best solution would have been a detention basin the entire length, because it'd stay dry most of the year except for a big rain, and there would be a giant shelf down here that would be recreational space later, and there had been another terrace that went across. Well, this terrace goes across to both, but the terrace would have continued all the way around where the bottom of their fence has a terrace anyway. And then ultimately, altogether, these things would have dried out more times per year. But the majority of the year, now that they're mature, it's dry. In the summer, we have we do not have mosquitoes because we have dragonflies, birds, all kinds of creatures living in here. Now, the last question that gets asked is, did you plant these trees? I did not plant these trees. These trees were planted by wildlife activity, and because the habitat and conditions were appropriate, just like the cattails up the hill. Birds had come and dropped the seed. And then that hill over there, it does need to be cut out and regraded because it's eroding. But again, it's not my property. The tips of this basin, you can see in the GIS, expand onto the other property. And so I'm not going to pay excavation work to come in there and fix all that stuff. Again, Justin Hitt from Prosperity Homestead. When you do your earthworks the right way, massive benefits. When you have to scuttle a project halfway because you're getting complaints, you can still leave it stable. I commend the contractors who've done a wonderful job here. And if I hadn't mowed it several times, there would probably be trees on this entire space instead of just the scrub. And so we're going to leave it with the butterfly bush. I'm going to head back up top. I think I'm going to walk around the back way, but we'll leave it with the butterfly bush. We get a lot of beautiful butterflies down here, a lot of pollinators, a lot of small birds. Thanks for watching. I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead. If you have questions about this kind of project, you can visit me at www.prosperityhomestead.org, and we can help you with your design. It is November 4th, and again, in the middle of a drought, we got a spring halfway up slope. Talk about resilience. We have minimal levels in the pond here, or the detention basin. It's actually been called a pond by quite a few people, and it's not a pond. And if the design was allowed to continue, it would actually have nothing in it. It would also be dry. But we are protecting the creek. We're protecting wildlife, and we're creating new habitat. Thanks for watching.